Hey guys, back for another week of Ask Ashley. So, this week I wanted to talk on the topic of sugar, um, substitutes for sugar, as well as sugar alternatives that you probably want to avoid. So, I'll start off just with talking about the everyday sugar. The recommended limit for added sugar per day is about 6 teaspoons or 25 grams for women, and 9 teaspoons, or that equates to about 37 to 38 grams for men. Some people can use that up just in their coffee in the morning. So I think as Americans, we already consuming way too much sugar than the recommended levels. And I think if we just get that under control, that would probably rid us of some of the health related issues that we have that are brought on by excess sugar. Um, the effects of sugar. So first, it's just addictive, and I think we all know that because we know when we're craving sweets all the time. Um, it actually gives your brain a surge of a chemical called dopamine that makes you feel good. And when your body starts to crave that more and more, you get that same feeling with sugar. You don't get that from traditional whole foods. So your body's going to want that sugar as it comes in, and you're going to keep going for that in order to feel good. Studies have linked high sugar intake to a greater risk of depression in adults. And you can kind of see where that's coming from with all of the peaks and valleys that you get from your body wanting, craving that sugar when it doesn't have it, um, its reaction to not having sugar in your system. So that's just something to think about. Also, eating lots of sweets can worsen your joints. It can cause inflammation, um, and just swelling from having too much sugar in your system. And also, it can cause your liver to be resistant to insulin, which is preventing your body from being able to control blood sugar levels, which is why you'll see a higher risk for type 2 diabetes when you consume a lot of sugar. Those are just a few effects. The real story is that everything needs to be consumed in moderation, and we as Americans, we just consume way too much sugar in comparison to the daily recommended intake levels. For me, because of how addictive sugar is, I personally sometimes will just cut it out completely for a while in order to get that craving out of my system, and then I'll introduce it back. And I won't have as much of a desire for it as I did previously. If you have a major problem when it comes to sugar, that might be an option for you to try and see if that helps you kick that habit. I know I preach balance a lot and try not to just cut things completely out, but in the case of sugar, because of that addictive property, it is sometimes, at least for me, necessary to just go cold turkey and introduce it back when I feel like I've gotten that craving under control. So some substitutes for sugar. I'll start off with some alternatives that you should just avoid altogether. The first one, which I'm sure that you've seen studies on it and are well aware that aspartame is an ingredient that you need to make sure is not in any of the products that you consume. It can be typically used as a substitute in a lot of diet sodas or diet sugar-free things. Make sure aspartame is not in there. It's been linked to seizures, brain damage, can be a contributing factor to ADHD. So you don't want that in your system at all. Another alternative or to sugar that I used to use a lot until I realized that it's not as good as I thought it was is agave. I would use agave nectar, the sweetener for pancake syrup. It comes in the same similar can come in a similar consistency as pancake mix. So I would pour that on as a substitute for my Aunt Jemima's, or I would put that in my oatmeal or anything that I wanted to use for sweetening. But it actually has higher levels of fructose than high fructose corn syrup, which is something that you should be avoiding as well. So It's also got a pretty high level of carbs and sugar. So, well, grams of sugar in it. So you're actually still not avoiding the high percentage or high grams of added sugar that you may have thought just because you were using an alternative. So agave nectar not as great as it seems. Maybe in smaller quantities that's okay, but the fructose is something to keep an eye on. Now, one product that I think is pretty good alternative for sugar is stevia. Now, one thing to note is that the stevia products that you find in the grocery store, such as Truvia or stevia in the raw, those don't really contain the whole stevia leaf. They're made from a refined stevia leaf extract, so sometimes the product doesn't have any stevia in it at all, but it's about 200 times sweeter than table sugar, so you don't need a whole lot of it. So the fact that it's not much stevia in it, um, and that it has other refined um, extracts in it, you won't it won't cause a negative effect on you, I don't believe, because you're using it in such small doses. So pay attention to the nutrition facts and the serving size for those stevia and Truvia brands, because if you try to equate it one for one, what you would with sugar, it's going to be way too sweet, and it also has somewhat of an aftertaste. So keep those, it's small quantities, like less than like a fourth of a teaspoon or something. So that can get you the sugar that you need, and you won't be hitting that 25 grams or 37 grams in a day. So consider those options. Stevia is the only one that I've tried that I can speak on right now. I know there are probably some other natural alternatives for sugar that I'm gonna look into and will be able to give better feedback on those. I know stevia was a question from one of you also. If you're using that, that's fine. It's best to find it in its as close to its whole form as possible. The liquid stevia, it comes in like little droplets. Um, Use that probably instead of the white sugar if you can find it. I know they have it at most grocery stores in the same section that they sell the stevia in the raw, but just it might be tucked away. So see if you can find it in liquid form, and like one or two drops can get you what you need as far as sweetness. Try that out, and I will check with you guys next week.